it's very appropriate that the state of Virginia be involved in our revolution that's going on. Of course, our revolution is the American Revolution. You know, we had a pretty good start in this country a few years back, but we've drifted away, and for many years now, for nearly 100 years, I think there's been a lot of forgetting about what the original intent was of the Constitution. They have forgotten what a true republic is all about. That is our goal, is to restore the American public to the American people. You know, they keep asking about winning particular states in this campaign, but guess what? We're still winning a lot of delegates, and that's what counts. You know, and every once in a while they include my name in the polling, and that is always helpful. And just recently there was a pretty good poll out, just yesterday and the day before. It says that we do the best against Obama. Now, winning the primary, of course, is very, very important, but winning the general election also is very, very important. It is our message that appeals to the independents, to the Democrats, and to the Republican base. Because very simply, it's the message of liberty, and the message of liberty is what we were all about. That means we have individual liberty. We're allowed to lead our lives as we so choose. But, you know, if we have a natural right to our life and our liberties, as Jefferson argued and we agree with, shouldn't we have the natural right to keep the fruits of our labor? Now, there's a couple ways that they undermine and take the fruits of our labor from us. One is direct taxation, and of course the founders didn't like that. They didn't give us an income tax, so that's why we have to start thinking about 1913 again. That's why we need to repeal the 16th Amendment, for sure. Of course, to have big government, they tax. They had to have the income tax, and then they had to have the borrowing. Unfortunately, Jefferson lost that argument, and the federal government was able to borrow. But there's a limit on borrowing. If they keep borrowing and Congress spends too much money, interest rates go up, and they have to quit. But they had this little gimmick. It was also introduced in 1913, and that is, well, if there's a limit on taxing, because the people will object, and there's a limit to borrowing or interest rates go up, they say, we'll have this new gimmick. What we're going to do is just print the money when we need it. And of course they... Okay, what can I do? Of course, if you want big government, that's what you have. You have high taxes, and you have the borrowing, but eventually then they have to print the money. And of course, the founders knew this, understood it, and were cautious about it, warned us against it, and that's why they understood it clearly, because they had runaway inflation with the continental dollar. That is why they put it in the Constitution that only gold and silver could be legal tender. There is no authority to print money, and there's no authority to have a Federal Reserve System, a central bank. Now the Fed's been around for 99 years, and guess what? They've lost 99% of the value of our dollar from 1913. Pretty bad record. And I'm going to let you in on a little secret. The chairman of the Federal Reserve will be before the banking committee tomorrow, and I just might show up and ask him why they're destroying our money. And I can assure you that we probably won't get a straight answer. But no, obviously the monetary issue is a very big issue. Governments can't grow without it, and it's been growing endlessly, because when government grows, liberty is undermined. And since that time, since the progressive era, we have undermined our liberties, whether it's through the encroachment of the entitlement system. The entitlement system was set up for those poor who were going to fall through the crack. But I think the best demonstration of the failure of that was the housing bubble. During the housing bubble, which was created by the Federal Reserve and the affirmative action type programs by the Congress, guess what? Who made a lot of money during this time? The banks and the brokers and the Fannie Mae's and the Freddie Macs, and they made all the money. Then they got into the gambling of derivatives and they got into big trouble, and lo and behold, the predictable crunch came and the predictable bursting of the bubble came, and when it came, they yelled and screamed. They said, "We're too big to fail, we're too big to fail, you have to bail us out, there's going to be a depression coming." So guess what? The Fed and the Congress bailed them out. But guess what? Those very people that these programs were designed for, to give everybody a house, guess what? They lost their jobs and they lost their houses, and it's not resolved yet, because the entitlement system tends to help the wealthy much more so than the poor. The poor are deceived into believing that the government can produce wealth forever and redistribute it. But I'll tell you what, there's a transfer of wealth from the middle class to the wealthy. That occurs just with the destruction of a currency. The middle class gets wiped out and the wealthy get wealthier. And this is what has happened. Wealth is okay if people make money honestly and they don't make it by ripping us off and getting advantages from the government. If they give us a product, if they give us a good product and we vote confidence in them and they make money, that is a lot different than if they're in the military-industrial complex or in the banking system and they get the money first and they get the contracts and they get the bailouts. That's not fair, and it's not fair to dump the wasteful products and all the debt on the American people. That debt obviously should be liquidated. But the fact that printed money can encourage wasteful spending, it certainly is true with overseas spending. Just look at the waste. The wars that have been going on for the past 10 years have added $4 trillion to our national debt, and what have we gotten from it? We are less safe and we're broke. So the very simple solution to overextension overseas is to follow the advice of the founders, follow the Constitution, have a strong national defense, defend this country, but get out of the business of policing the world and get out of the business of nation building. So how many wars would we have been fighting since World War II? Zero. None have been declared. They were unnecessary. Too many lives lost, too many dollars spent, too many veterans suffering now without getting medical care. It doesn't solve our problems. If I thought we were safer and necessary, yes, we should do it, but it doesn't work that way. So what we need is a new foreign policy based on non-intervention, minding our own business, obeying the Constitution, and taking the advice of the founders. It's much better to talk to people than initiate war against them. You know, they keep saying, the previous administration, this administration, take nothing off the table when it has to dealing with our enemies. Well, what about why should we take off negotiations? Why not diplomacy? Should we take that off? I remember very, very well after being drafted in 1962 during the Cuban crisis. The Cuban crisis was dissipated rather rapidly, precisely because John Kennedy called up Khrushchev and said, we have a problem here. And Khrushchev, well, we have a problem over here. You have missiles over in Turkey. So they made a deal. We took the missiles out of Turkey, he took the missiles out of Cuba, and we didn't have to fight a nuclear war. Why can't we talk to people who have weapons of mass destruction? But now, of course, they're talking about attacking another country, Iran. They're far from... And there's no evidence they even have a weapon. They haven't even proved, our CIA doesn't even prove to us or tell us that they are building one. And yet the war drums are beating and beating. So we have to be heard about this. This country does not need another war at can guarantee you, if I'm to be elected president, I will never go to a war and pursue a war without proper direction from the Congress, a declaration coming from the people. I will not do it. We were warned at the time of the founding of this country that if we were not a moral people willing to accept that responsibility, it's not going to work. And we drifted too long. We had so much prosperity. We concentrated on the wealth and we became consumers. And too often what we did was we generated the lobbyists going to Washington to divvy up the loot that they take from the people. And as long as that happens, if the society is immoral and they want market, it doesn't work. So it has to come from the people. The type of government we have is a reflection of the people. So as this movement grows, as the number of people grow, and it is, just think of how many young people have joined this revolution. But also, it's great to see the young people leading the charge, but we also see others at different age groups. Ones that have been frustrated, the ones who have been independent, the ones that have dropped out, and even the frustrated Democrats have come over and said, you know, this understanding of liberty is good, and I think that is the reason this message. When this revolution is successful, it will not be a Republican monopoly at all. It will be bipartisan. It will be endorsed by all the American people. Understand what this is all about and why liberty is the answer to the mess that we're in today. Thank you very much for coming. Thank you.